It's Seeing Red, the New York Soccer Roundup. Since 2010, your weekly source for independent New York Red Bulls news and opinion. Now, from the Joe Goldstein studio, here's your host, Mark Fishkin.
Hello, hello, hello. It's Seeing Red back in your feed with a three-man booth. Can you believe it? Not only we have Mike Batista, we also have Daniel Rebane getting you ready as the Red Bulls look to get off the schneid. They have not won in over a month. And as the international break comes to an end, Red Bulls will take the field on Saturday, a place they haven't been since February 28th, as they take on an FC Cincinnati that has 3 losses on the young season. Tonight on Seeing Red Inside the Show, is it just as simple as fixing the defense? How the Red Bulls can get their groove back? We'll preview the Red Bulls hosting FC Cincinnati. Cincinnati is one of the few, if only, team in MLS that dominates the Red Bulls in Harrison. We'll give our predictions. We have a chat with Danny Higginbotham of MLS on Apple TV. And then we'll have, as always, the Keepers Mailbag. Boys, how you been? Mike, Dan, it's Open Cup night for Mike. He's got 18 things going on. Dan, what is happening with you, my friend?
Well, I just got, here from watching the Artemis 2 launch, and that looked
Very
amazing. Cool. First time going back to the moon in over 50 years. So that's cool. They're not going to be landing on the moon, but it's still cool to just get up there in the first place. So that was fun.
Yeah, that was very cool. Mike, what's happening in your world, my man?
Vermont Green's about to kick off against Westchester SC. We're seeing a lot of good games last night. Main event tonight, really, with that Vermont Green game. And also, right now, Chattanooga's taking on Poku. So, things are going great.
All right. Well, let's get into it. For the Red Bulls, 2 of their last 3 matches have been abject failures, not only getting man-marked into oblivion against Montreal, but taking a 1-0 deficit at Charlotte 2 weeks ago and turning it into a 6-1 absolute demolition. What is it going to take for Bradley's boys to start to climb back and get some better performances? Obviously, Justin Shea out with a hamstring injury, and I don't think we're going to see him back this week, is a big part of it. Is it just as simple an equation as getting some guys healthy back on the back line? I open the floor.
I personally think it is. Look, we went into the season with a Red Bull 2 guy getting a short-term call-up and suddenly becoming a star. I'm not saying that these guys getting better, because we started the season with 3 guys on the bench who could solidly be, starting 11 guys. Problem is that, when you took them away, you really felt that presence be gone. You didn't have the bench depth. You put them on, you can go a full 90 minutes versus maybe going a full 60 or 65. I think just that added leg presence is going to help this team not feel as stretched out during game time. It won't mean that they can suddenly start scoring goals. Like you said, the offense is tricky, but having those players just for the games is what matters right now, especially players who know the Red Bull style.
Dan, your thoughts on what New York needs to do to step it up?
Yeah, clearly they need to get healthy on the back end. Getting Dylan Neal's back, getting Justin Shea back, and Shea's going to take much longer than Nealis. Nealis, hopefully, he's back this week. I know he took that ankle shot a couple of weeks ago in training, and that's why he went down. So, 2 guys that coming into the season weren't going to be starting center backs were starting for you, and through the first 2 games they look solid, but. If this team was going to be relying on those 2 guys to be starters the full season, I think, most people would expect that Red Bull was going to struggle. And, with them out of the lineup, with guys like, Robert Velo there, who's not looked the best so far in his couple of starts, Tim Parker, who's aging again, and the Colombian guy we just brought in as well, who still isn't even here. Yeah, he's still in Brazil waiting for his visa. So, yeah, I think it's just about getting healthy on the back end, and letting those guys build that chemistry and that time together on the pitch together, right? And then looking forward on the offense.
Yes.
I think the biggest thing is, in midfield, I think they've been fine, right? Sometimes there is, they're losing balls and losing possession, right? But I think the biggest concern for me is the wing play. I think, when you look at, right wing with Cade Cowell being one-dimensional, trying to get down to the byline and cross the ball, and I think teams are they kind of already figured it out, but like they were starting to figure it out at game 2 season, right? So I think he's got to open up his playbook, his skill bag. He's got to open that up, go on his left foot once in a while, cut in on your left foot, maybe drive at a defender. And then on the other side, I think George just needs to be more aggressive in what he does, because you'll see that he'll free himself up on some of these dribbles. It's just that he's not taking that shot right away, or he's not making that clinical pass when he should, right? I think that's just him kind of building himself up into being, one of the main guys on a team at Red Bull, and not just being a guy down in Mexico. So I think his issue is more fixable. Just got to be more aggressive in your decision making. I think Cade Cowell, is the biggest question is, can he adapt to and evolve his game more than we've seen this season and throughout the last couple of seasons in Mexico?
I think for Ruvalcaba, who I think leads the league in slow dribblers to the keeper over the first 5 games of the season, he has to be a little bit more clinical. I agree he needs to be more aggressive, but this is a guy that can score goals. We've seen it. And you don't do it by nudging balls off your toe and letting them roll to get the keeper pick them up. And that seems to be happening 3 or 4 times a game. Interesting to note, 2 players have scored for the Red Bulls this year. They've scored 5 goals in 5 games, right? Hall has 4 of them. 4 players have assists. Adri Mehmeti, Emil has 1. Dos Santos has 1 off the free kick against the Revs, the set piece against the Revs, and Cade Cowell has 1. I think you have to have everyone is allowed a transition period when you come into the league. We've seen good motion from Rubalcaba, and I think we all agree he's better on the left than the right, but he needs to actually get out of his head for a little bit and realize that he needs to be a major player in this attack if New York is going to have success. Let's talk about the midfield. I mean, if it's a question of Forsberg and Audrey and Donkor, those 3 seem to have figured it out. But at a time when New York wants to push, and you'll hear from Danny Higginbotham, I mean, he sees this Saturday's match as quality counterattacking from Cincinnati versus hardcore possession play and building attack from New York. And you don't want to say New York's going to walk into a trap here, and we all know how good Cincinnati's attack is, and we'll get into Cincinnati in a minute. But like, if Donkor and Audrey are not in sync, it's going to be a very, very long day.
Can I just ask you real quick, because I wanted to bring this up before. We're talking about the issues of the offense. How is this any different from last year? How is this any different than from last year, where our issues was 18 of our 30-something goals came from Chumoting, and the other, Chumoting, and then like the other large third of it came from Emil Forsberg. It just sounds like the same story as last year.
I think there's a lot to that, and I think New York is going to have to clean up the set pieces in a major way. We've seen absolute horror shows from Horvath, either aligning his defense on restarts or corners or whatever, or poor working from a shorter team in the box. And I mean, I think, listen, when you go 3 games winless and you've scored twice and you've conceded 10 times in those 3 games, there's one direction to go here, Dan.
Yeah, and I think James mentioned it on his pod last week, where every game to start the year for Red Bull has gotten increasingly harder and harder against better competition. Starting the season off against Orlando and New England, like those teams have kind of showed you where they are. Montreal just a bit better than them, and then obviously Toronto right above them, and then Charlotte showed what they're capable of this season, and then right out the international break, Cincinnati, right? So it's really interesting to see how these guys come out of the break. A couple guys went away to their national teams, but for the most part, most of the team was here. So it's going to see how they kind of recover from that bashing that they got in Charlotte, and how they kind of come out on the front foot against a really good Cincinnati team.
Yeah, and what you didn't mention, Dan, is that next week they go to Miami's new stadium.
Yeah,
and then the return match against Montreal in Quebec, where the Red Bulls rarely win, DC, and then the away match at Cincinnati. So you'll be 9 matches into the season. We'll be done with Montreal and Cincinnati. It's a strange schedule, man. Let's dig in to what's going on with Cincinnati, and we can talk about what the Red Bulls will face this weekend. Here we go. Cincinnati has had a very strange start to their season, in the sense that they've got 3 losses already. They've also crashed out of the CONCACAF Champions Cup in the first 5 weeks of the season. They're currently 9th in the East. That's 1 spot down from New York, but we're not so concerned about where the team is on the table. They haven't won away, with 1 goal and 4 and 7 goals against, and that includes a 6-1 pasting at the Revs. They also went to Tigres in the CCL and they threw away a 3-goal advantage in the 2-legged tie in like half an hour. They also have 2 red cards, which is tied for second in the league. They do have a tendency to score late, as they lead the league in goals in the final 15 minutes of the game. Here's their last 5. Last time out, but right before the break, they were tied with Montreal. Just like the Red Bulls, they gave up 3 goals to Montreal. And Denke got a goal in the 94th minute at the end to win the game at home. Before that 5-1 loss to Tigres, as I mentioned. Before that, a 6-1 pasting at New England when Valenzuela got a red card. And, again, those are the 2 red cards. They had a really, really good outing at home against Tigres, and then they threw it all away. And before that, a 1-0 loss to TFC. And so, New York, they played a lot of the same opponents here, but they're having their challenges as their own. A lot of changes. Let's do players out first. Kai Kamara, who is 41, is a free agent. Michael, is he playing it for a USL team? Do we know where Kai Kamara is?
I have not heard his name pop up recently.
Is he playing for Vermont Green tonight?
That would get people out to Vermont Stadium. He's not, though. I think he's still a free agent.
Keep that in mind. Yaya Kubo, who scored a number of game winners against the Red Bulls, has departed. Brad Smith-Brenner's loan, right? He was sold to Vasco da Gama, and then he came back and played, and that loan ended. Lucas Engel, Dominic Marjuk, his loan expired. He went back to RSL. Interleague loans are weird. Barrial spent time with Cincinnati, and he got sold to Santos for $7.5 million. That's good coin. And Luca Orellano joined Monterrey on a free. In for Cincy, Ayub Jabari, a 26-year-old Moroccan, came from Grenoble for $2.1 million. Kyle Smith, 34-year-old right back, came from Orlando on a free. Your friend and mine, Tom Barlow, is now playing at FC Cincinnati. He's 30 years old, ladies and gentlemen.
30 years old.
He came over on a free from Chicago. So he's going to see the field this week.
I'm getting old, man.
But time moves in one direction. Christian Fletcher, a 20-year-old left wing, came from DC United. Brian Ramirez came over from LDU Quito in Ecuador for 2.7, and Fabian Brozek, a 22-year-old Polish goalkeeper, RIP Poland in their World Cup hopes. Sorry, Dan.
Yeah, thanks.
Signed from Liverpool on a loan. Themes for Cincy. Defense is breached. Despite the fact that Cincinnati were once again expected to be contenders this season, the results have really told a different story. And prior to the break, Cincy embarked on a run that was almost reminiscent of the wooden spoon days for them, conceding 14 times in 3 games, including a 6-1 and 5-1 losses to New England and Tigres. And even though Cincinnati ended that 3-game stretch with the 4-3 win against CFM, The defensive frailties are evident, and for a team that has so long been tough to beat defensive powerhouse in MLS, these results come as a bit of a surprise and could be a reason for a down on their luck Red Bulls team to get a shot in the arm Saturday night. I don't know. Front office failure. Since the wooden spoon days, Cincy has been the epitome of what front office management should look like in MLS. But this season, things have changed. Key players who were only signed on loan were allowed to leave, like Brenner and Engel and Orellano, and with the exception of Brian Ramirez, have not really been replaced with players of quality. Red Bull fans obviously know Tom Barlow, who appears to be a genuine starter for the Cincinnati group alongside Kevin Denke. And while he scored a couple of goals, his presence in the 11 is evident of Cincinnati's faltering recruitment. Yikes. Shots fired. This is the 20th all-time meeting between these teams. And not only does Cincinnati lead the all-time series by one game, in Harrison, Cincinnati has 6 wins to Red Bulls 3 with 2 draws. And in fact, if you check our Insta page this afternoon, the Red Bulls have won just once in the last 9 matches that the teams have played in Harrison. And that includes 2 playoff games and an Open Cup game. It is not good. The Red Bulls are one of the best home teams in MLS, but Cincinnati has the Red Bulls number when playing at Sports Illustrated Stadium. The last time these two teams met, it was Kevin Denke's goal in the 12th minute that stood up in a 1-0 win for FCC. Lewis Morgan is the all-time leading goal scorer against Cincy. There is not a single player on the current Red Bulls roster, which is not a huge surprise given the massive amounts of turnover, that has scored against Cincy. Last year in 2 games, the Red Bulls did not score against Cincy. And here is what Pat Noonan's lineup may look like. Of course, young goalkeeper Roman Celentano in goal. Maybe he's not so young. He's 25. He's also given up 13 goals so far this season in 7 games in all comps. They have a 5-man back line. You know those wings push up with Brian Ramirez, the Ecuadorian left back, teenage Hadebe from Zimbabwe, your friend and mine, Matt Miazga, he of the locker room tourism, definitely involved here. Alvis Powell, a known quantity in MLS, Jamaican, with a goal and assist this year. Ender, I'm going to do my best, Eshanique from Venezuela with a goal and 3 assists. And that matchup between Ender and Matty Dos Santos is going to be key, says Danny Higginbotham. We'll hear about that in a minute. Pavel Bucha and Albina and Wobodo, who both have time in the league. And Wobodo has 5 assists on the season. And Evander is the number 10 here for Cincinnati. Denke with 6 goals and 2 assists. And Ayoub Jabari, the newcomer from Morocco, with 3 goals. And obviously Kevin Denke is the player to watch and to be most concerned about with Cincinnati, despite a relatively poor season by Cincy's recent standards. One thing that has remained strong for the Orange and Blue has been their attacking prowess. Evander gets many of the plaudits, but he's one man that's been in fine form this season with 6 goals and 2 assists. The Togo international, Cincinnati's main man, and he has been for most MLS defensive this season. He'll be a major handful for whoever will be playing on the back line. Miles Robinson, who, a name that you must know, has been suspended for this match after a red card received last time out against Montreal. And so, gentlemen, you've got a Red Bulls team looking for something to feel good about after getting pasted. You've got a Cincinnati team that's kind of been down on their luck lately. Let's start with you, Dan. What are you looking to see in this match? What's the prediction?
I mean, I'm kind of you kind of touched on it. It's about that counterattack. I mean, you look at Denke and Evander kind of leading that charge when, Red Bull's going to probably own possession for most of this game. And, if they lose that possession and aren't able to kind of, regain it quickly, it could be dangerous going the other way, especially with the guys already missing from the back line. Hopefully Dylan Nealis is kind of coming back into this lineup because they need him desperately. But I think that's going to be the main matchup for me is Denke versus Robert Veloder. I mean, you touched on Dos Santos on at left back against Cincinnati's right wing back, but I think Veloder versus Denke, is Veloder kind of able to elevate his game to what we've seen already this year, and if not, I mean, Denke could have a hat trick today, this weekend.
Mike, your thoughts on what we might see on Saturday?
I mean, we're going to see two teams who desperately don't want you to get near their back line.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is that neither team is a shining example right now, but go by college basketball logic, common opponent. How did the Red Bulls do against CF Montreal versus how did FC Cincinnati do against CF Montreal? And it's funny though because FC Cincinnati has been blown out a lot more than the Red Bulls. And to be fair, they've also played against other league competition compared to the Red Bulls and had a harder schedule to start.
Right.
But I feel as though they're starting to find that momentum versus the Red Bulls, who went into the break with a 6-1 loss. I don't know. That break was much needed for the Red Bulls. I don't know if you're going to see that stop as Cincinnati, because say what you want about Tom Barlow, he scored. He scored a goal. I know, it's shocking. The dude who's, probably got the third most playoff goals in Red Bull history.
Right.
He did have some consistency there. Am I saying that's a good thing? No, because he shouldn't be starting games. But I will say that overall, if they could find consistency what they have, that's better than what New York has right now. Because New York doesn't have a back line. The guy they were going to have starting just got a red card because he wasn't a natural center back. So I feel like Cincinnati is the one who's got the momentum and the consistency and the cohesiveness right now compared to New York.
Keep in mind, if we're talking common opponents, the Red Bulls had a 1-1 draw against Toronto, while Cincy lost 1-0 to them. Counterpoint.
Oh my.
Recency bias. All right. Before we go to break, I want to tell you about two things. First of all, we've got another beer special with our friends at Keepers in Harrison, and that's between 6 p.m. and kickoff on Saturday night. And to be clear, although we may have some rain coming over the next day or so, Saturday night is going to be gorgeous. 66 degrees and clear, maybe some clouds at kickoff. And if you go to Keepers right across the street from Sports Illustrated Stadium in Harrison, from 6 o'clock till kickoff and mention Seeing Red, there's a $5 super box special for you. So please,
boom,
we urge you to go in and stop in and take us up on that cool offer that we have. And the second, of course, is our mention, as we do, about what's happening in the Riverbend district. It's a dynamic residential neighborhood in Harrison, New Jersey, offering modern retail rental buildings, with Studio 1 and 2-bedroom residences designed for everyday comfort and convenience. With the Harrison Path Station nearby, residents enjoy an easy commute to Manhattan, Newark, and beyond, making Riverbend an ideal home base for those who want access alongside a welcoming neighborhood feel. Set along the Passaic River, the district blends contemporary apartments with friendly neighborhood atmosphere. Local dining, like Keepers, entertainment, waterfront views, and community gathering spaces create a place where daily routines feel easier and weekends feel more relaxed. Riverbend brings together the energy of an urban environment with the sense of belonging that comes from a thoughtfully planned community, and they're now offering up to 1 month free on select residences. So schedule a tour today at riverbenddistrict.com. And when we are back on Seeing Red, we're going to talk to, for the first time, Danny Higginbotham of MLS. You can't even say of MLS on Apple TV. He will be calling Saturday's game with our good friend Steve Cangelosi this Saturday, and Danny's got some really good insights. So stay with us, and we'll be back with the Keepers Mailbag after this. Here at the New York Soccer Roundup, Red Bulls need to get off the schneid this week in a really bad way. They need to win, looking for the first win since February 28th, and now it's April, and that's not great. But some of it is great. Appearing on Seeing Red, I believe for the first time.
Yeah.
Danny Higginbotham appeared 400 times nearly for English football sides before making the jump across the pond. And since 2020, he's been calling MLS games. And on Saturday night at Sports Illustrated Stadium, he'll be in the booth with our friend Steve Cangelosi. Danny Higginbotham, welcome to Seeing Red.
Thank you. It's like you say, it's my debut. It's a pleasure to be on. So looking forward to the game as well. It's a very intriguing game as well, I think.
It is an intriguing game. Cincinnati is not playing the kind of ball and getting the kind of results that they are used to over the last few years, where they've really, they've been kind of the cream of the Eastern Conference. What in your mind, what's contributed so much to their slow start this year?
I think if I go back, because obviously before I started doing stuff with Apple to do with MLS, I was covering Philadelphia Union for the local broadcast, and I got to know Jim Curtin well. He's a friend of mine, and I think one of the things that always does take its toll early on in the season is the sort of CONCACAF Champions Cup. I think that has a huge part to play, because what happens is, whether it's new players, whether it's new ideas that you want to get across, it's difficult because you have very little time on the training ground. Players are traveling all over the place. We're seeing it actually with Philadelphia Union now, and obviously Philadelphia Union have had a big turnover of players, and it's a big adjustment. And I think for Cincinnati, I think that was one of the issues, without doubt, because you don't become a poor team overnight, and they got a much needed win from their side of things against Montreal last game, where they won it in the last minute and they were down to 10 men. So I'm sure that Pat Noonan will look at it and say, right, okay, last game in MLS, then you have 2 weeks sort of on the training pitch. You speak to any coaches, they will tell you the most important thing is, can I get ideas across on the pitch? Can I get the players used to each other or used to different things that we're trying to do? Because what you find early on in the season with the CONCACAF Champions Cup, you find that a lot of the players are having to learn or get used to what specific changes a manager may want. They're having to actually get used to that on the pitch during games, which is not ideal.
Yeah. This is a team, though, that is usually pretty solid in the back. We've known about their attacking, key attacking players, Evander and Kevin Denke. But with Celentano in net, they're usually pretty good. They've conceded boatloads of goals so far this season, right? 6 against the Revs. And I mean, the Red Bulls know what it's like to give up 3 goals to Montreal. But Cincinnati did as well. As you said, they just got by on a last-second goal. What's been the challenge in the back for Cincinnati?
I watched their game against Montreal, and they looked very open. I think one of the things that I would personally say about Cincinnati over the years is that they've been very, very disciplined. I think sort of the back three has been very organized. There has been some chopping and changing. Obviously, Miazga's come back from injury. You've got Robinson, you've got Hagland. I'm just trying to think. You've got the different players. You've got Hadebe. So you've had Powell there as well. So I think there's probably a little bit of inconsistency at times within that back three. And I think that probably has a lot to do with the simple fact of the weight of games that they've had as well. And I think any defender will tell you, and any coach will probably tell you, that defensively you want to be able to have sort of consistency. And I think that's something that Pat Noonan will be looking for going forward, without doubt. And obviously with the Red Bulls, we've seen how they've suffered with the defense. Yeah, with the defense. And people just think, well, it's okay. Well, we can just put this player at centre back, or we can put this player at centre back. It doesn't work like that. The higher up the pitch you go, you can do that because you play off the cuff higher up the pitch, and you can do your own bits of individual brilliance. But defensively, you have to be able to work in tandem, whether it's with the rest of the back three or the rest of the back four. So I'm sure that's something Pat Noonan will be looking for, just to get that consistency within his back three. Although, we saw that Robinson got sent off against Montreal, so that's a big player that's likely to be missing for them.
Yeah, for sure. Cincinnati seems to have the Red Bulls number in Harrison, and as I'm sure you know, Harrison for New York, they have either the first or second best home record in the league since they've been here. It seems like Cincinnati's ascent was happening just as New York kind of came off their Shield era and have kind of foundered a bit. And I'm just kind of curious, did you ever have a situation in your playing career when you just kind of knew that when you went into a particular ground that, like, it was you had it there?
Yeah. It was, and it's such a weird feeling because when I was at Stoke City and we were obviously in the Premier League and West Bromwich Albion were in the Premier League as well. It's sort of a local rivalry, a bit of a local derby. We knew every time we went to the Hawthorns, played good, bad, or indifferent, we were probably going to win 3-0 or 3-1. It was such a bizarre thing. But the weird thing is that it's a difficult one because when that continues for years and years and years, the players have changed, the managers have changed, the squads have changed, but one thing remains the same. And you always have that, like, I don't know if they say the same thing over here, but in England we call it a bogey team, which is like, doesn't matter. You play against them no matter how well you play. It's like, yeah, we play well and lose, or we play poorly and we win every time. So it is one of those very strange things, because when you look at Red Bulls, one of the best home records in MLS, Cincinnati last season, one of the best away records in MLS as well. So, obviously it's not started so well away from home for Cincinnati so far. I think they've, if my memory serves me correctly,
they haven't won away yet.
Yeah, they played 2 and lost 2.
Yeah, they don't have a point. And of course the wheels coming off in Mexico as well. So
yes, yeah. So I think that's why I find this game really interesting, because you've got a team that's trying to get back on track that has been so dominant in recent seasons in terms of being at the top of the East, and I have so much respect for Pat Noonan. And then you have another team that's sort of first-time coach in Michael Bradley, that you can see the ideas he's wanting to get across, and he's got these exciting young players. So that's why I know at the start of this conversation we said that it's a really fascinating game, and I will go on record to say now it will not be 0-0.
Okay. Well, I mean, I think that's a pretty good. We're waiting to hear. Obviously, Justin Shea coming off of a hamstring injury, and those can be really, really dicey. I know the team's hoping to get Dylan Nealis back, and that's great. What have you seen so far out of New York that excites you and that gives you reason for pause, with the understanding that I think after 2 weeks they were the talk of the league. It was Bradley's high schoolers dominating MLS, and then since then they haven't had a win. It's been a long time. The wheels have kind of come off. They've gotten beaten badly, very badly, twice in 2 out of 3 games. I'm just kind of curious what your thoughts are.
So if I look at the Charlotte game, I thought they started exceptionally well. I thought they were the better team until they conceded. I think what you will find is that, and I can talk about this from my own experience, whether it being a senior player in a team of younger players or a younger player in a team of senior players. You find yourselves in instances as young players, there is a naivety. Sometimes that naivety is magnificent to watch. Sometimes it does get the better of you, but that's all about growing pains. And I think what we're seeing at the moment is a Red Bulls team that, and give credit as well, because there's so many youngsters in this team.
So many.
Yeah, but they're taking the game to the opposition. They're taking the game to the opposition every single game. But what happens is that with so many young players in the team, there can be ill discipline. And what I mean by ill discipline is that when you lose the ball, you could be in all kinds of trouble. And that seems to be the case against Charlotte. But that's what you're going to find with youngsters. You will have youngsters that will have a 9 out of 10 one week. The next week it might be a 5 out of 10, then a 7 out of 10, then a 4 out of 10. That's part of the process. And I don't want to compare the two at all. But if I go back to when I was younger and I was at Manchester United, the class of 92 are about 3-4 years older than me. Okay. And I remember they had a wonderful coach, Eric Harrison, may he rest in peace. He was my coach as well. You had Beckham, the Nevilles, but Scholes, obviously Giggs was a little bit before them. But they were coming into a team that had players that were guiding them. So you had your Brian Robsons, your Gary Pallisters, your Steve Bruces, your Mark Hugheses, your Paul Parkers, your Peter Schmeichels, your Eric Cantonars. You had these players that were such top-class players that they could look after their own game whilst looking after the younger players' games. And that for me is so important. But I think what you're finding here is a group of young players that are full of confidence, that there's probably less guidance on the field because Red Bulls doesn't have that seniority even amongst the senior players, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think the players are definitely looking up to Forsberg and to Chupo, but there are only 2 players. Chupo's not starting every game, right? Because you've got a 17-year-old with 4 goals on the season. And I think that Forsberg can do so much, and it's a real challenge, and obviously Bradley has his ideas about how he wants to play, and he's going to make mistakes. And he reminded me a bit, Danny, of coming off 6-1 against Charlotte, of the Jesse Marsh days when he would kind of revert back to the metrics after a match and said, yeah, we got killed, but we did a lot of things that we wanted to do. It just didn't happen that way. And obviously once you're down, 3-0 on the road on a fake pitch, it's, you kind of head to the chopper mentally. And that's another thing about young players, right? That they're getting down, and it's tough to reset your brain to it's 0-0. Let's keep playing. So I just think he has really strong ideas about what he wants to do. And I think for the most part, Red Bull fans are giving him, the leeway. But I'll tell you, more 3+ goal losses here, and the fans will be certainly like, you want to lose by 1 goal 3 weeks in a row. I think fans will be a little more forgiving, but getting blown out is just not the way.
No, of course not. But I think as a coach, what you have to do is that if you have these ideas and you've been working hard on it all preseason, a lot of these younger players as well because of your previous role. I think if you just rip it up because maybe it's not worked a couple of times, you don't lose a dressing room, but the players are like, well, hang on a second, we've been doing this for so long, and now we're going to go and change to do something else. So I think it's really important that when you have your ideas that you stick to them. And youngsters are going to make mistakes, whether it's defensively or whether it's in front of goal. And I would probably say that the 6-1 loss to Charlotte, there's more learned in defeat than sometimes winning.
Absolutely.
And I think that is one of the things that I'm sure all coaches look at. Okay, yes, we can pull out a few good things, but here's some examples of this is what we're doing wrong. And I think what you find now with young players, if they're sort of given that ability to be able to see where they're going wrong, the top ones, they may make the mistake a couple of times again, but they will learn and they will grow from that. And I think that becomes really important. So then what you're looking at sort of what is the bounce back like at the weekend? Well, there's been 2 weeks since the last game. And I think as footballers, you have to be like goldfish, because you have to forget about it. And then what happens is you retire, and then you want to enjoy being in the moment. When you're spending time with the family, it's very difficult to be in the moment because it's like, right, okay, this has happened. Let's put that to the side and we move on to the next one. And I think that's what happens as players. And when I look at the quality that you've got, you look at Mehmeti, you look at Hall, they don't look like kids.
No, they don't.
They play well beyond their years. So then what you're looking at and thinking, right, okay, as each game goes along, there's more experience that's going in. So it is going to be a bumpy ride. And I think if you look at any team that has quite a number of youngsters in their team, it's up, down, up, down, up, down, because that's the one thing it's very difficult to get is consistency from younger players, but they're learning every single week. And I think people look at it and go, well, it's a very young team, and it is a young team, but it can be exciting as well, because there'll be days when it clicks, when you'll be like, wow, this is amazing. But then there'll be other days where it's like, this isn't what I expected to see. Yeah. And that's what you are going to get with younger players. But the idea is that they learn from every game. They learn from the 6-1 loss. Where did we concede the goals? How did we concede the goals? Were we too busy as young players just looking that way instead of worrying what was behind us? But that's all about experience. I remember when I was 21 years of age, and I was having a really bad time at Derby County at the time, and Craig Burley was our captain. Obviously, he's over here now as well.
Right.
And after a game, I just said to him, I was like 21 years of age, and like I say, he was a captain. I said, can I have a word with you? He's like, yeah, of course you can. So we had a chat, and I thought he was going to give me some type of speech that was like, listen, as a young player, this is what you've got to do. This is what you've got to do. He just said to me, put it down to experience. And I was like, pardon? Put it down to experience. I was like, well, how's that going to help me? He said, because each time this happens, you get that bit more of experience. And then when you're faced with that same scenario on the pitch a year from now, these mistakes don't happen.
Yeah.
So it's as long as you're learning from mistakes that are being made, you're learning from the position that you're playing in. Were you out of position? Were you holding onto the ball too long? As long as you're learning from that, then it can be a learning curve. But I think the key to it is don't continuously make the same mistakes, because you do need to learn, and you need to learn quickly in this sport.
Yeah, for sure. Is there one, before we let you go, is there one matchup that's enticing for you for this game on Saturday? Something you're gonna be watching?
Yeah, I think so. If you're going to look at two players that aren't necessarily going to be coming up against each other, but are the two number 10s, then it's Forsberg and Evander.
Yeah,
I think Evander's obviously he's had a slow start to season. Everybody knows the quality that he's got. And then I'm really interested to Echenike, the right wing back for Cincinnati. He's a talent. And whoever's playing left back for Red Bulls, that's going to be a challenge.
yeah.
And I think it's going to be a game where you potentially, there's going to be a Cincinnati team that wants to play on the counter attack, and I think you've got a Red Bulls team that are going to want to dominate the ball and just try and pick passes and pick apart Cincinnati. So I love it when I see two different systems playing against each other and two different styles playing against each other, because what happens a lot of the times when you have two similar systems and two similar sort of philosophies, they cancel each other out. I don't think these two teams are going to cancel each other out.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be a really interesting game. I think it's going to be a good game. I think potentially it's going to be end to end, and I think it'll be high scoring as well.
All right. Danny Higginbotham will be calling the game with our bestie, Steve Cangelosi. Good luck in your match tonight,
Thank
sir.
you.
And we're looking forward to seeing you on the call on Saturday.
Thank you very much.
All right. We've got more Seeing Red, the Keepers Mailbag, coming up after this short break. So please keep it here. Oh, yeah. Seeing Red, the New York Soccer Roundup. Segment 3, as you know, is the Keepers Mailbag. And whether you're an MLS fan, which I'm pretty sure if you're listening to this you are, or an NWSL fan, or you're a Gotham fan, or you're an EPL fan, Keepers is the place to watch those matches. It's right across the street from Sports Illustrated Stadium in Harrison, and we urge you to go and check it out. They're good guys there. And please know that you can email us anytime at seeingredny@gmail.com. Yes, send us those emails. And what made this week so interesting, of course, is the fact that the Red Bulls did not play, and the mailbag is conspicuously empty. And so what I'd like to do as we close out the show,
I was about to say, I'm looking over at the rundown. I'm like, there's clearly
where are those emails?
There's clearly no email here.
No emails in the mailbag.
I thought you were kind of surprised.
We don't even have any Red Bull guys in the national team to talk about.
Well, but we do have the national team to talk about, and that's what I want to talk about. I want to talk about the U.S. getting ready to walk towards their inevitable round of 32 exit in the World Cup this summer.
When they get grouped.
Okay, all right, hold on. The team played two of the best teams in the league, in the world, to be fair, in the league, in Belgium and Portugal, who you can make the argument that they will be contenders to make very, very deep runs in the tournament. And they, after a first half against Belgium, where it didn't look too bad, they actually took a lead. The wheels came off in the second, very much like the Red Bulls in Charlotte. They followed that up with the 2-goal loss to Portugal. And here we are. There won't be any more games before Post puts his team together.
No,
they have 2 more games, but they will be after Post names the roster, if I'm reading correctly.
Oh, yeah, because they're in June, right?
Yes, they play Senegal and Germany in June, but that will be after the roster is named. Gentlemen, I have been a fan of U.S. soccer for most of my adult life. I have rarely been as ambivalent about this team. There is no buzz. There is very little excitement. And it's kind of literally, it's like, well, we can beat Paraguay and we can beat Australia, right? Because Turkey has entered the group after winning their playoff. Is the U.S. going to get out of the group?
Dan, why don't you start? Because I have a different angle I want to take with this.
I mean, based on those first 2 opponents, you would expect them to get out, right? They've already beat, I believe they beat Australia in a friendly. They've beaten Paraguay in a friendly.
They did,
right? So like they know what they're going to see out of those two teams, and on home soil, with maybe Paraguay brings a good percentage of fans, but for the most part, I think those two games, you're expecting a really home crowd for the U.S. The Turkey game probably is going to be a lot more Turkey fans, probably maybe more 50-50 in that stadium. But I mean, the expectation is definitely to get out of the group, and if they don't get out of the group, it's such a disappointment. But Mike, go ahead. You go say what you want to say right there.
Yeah, look, the expectation is that they should get out of the group. The problem is that Turkey's in that group now. It's a tougher. It's not an easy group by any means. And the other thing I'm going to say is that I've been noticing the hype, not just with the team, but like the tournament itself was down. And there's a lot of geopolitical reasons I won't get into. But there is the other point where I feel as though we aren't seeing that, and this is going to sound cheesy. There's nothing marketable about this U.S. team. There's nothing that you can get behind. There's nothing that look. But I'm 30. I wasn't around for '94, but my family was. I think there was talk because there were things that people could do. There were events. There were. There was a Wheaties sponsorship. There's things that was around that made that was World Cup time and that the U.S. team was in it and who you should know on the U.S. team. I don't even think people know who's on the U.S. team. I know Matt Freese is on the U.S. team. He's probably going to get cut. Like, I don't – there's so many players where it just feels like –
he's going to start.
I look at how much people talk about him. It feels like he's not going to make it. But you're right. He's going to. But that's the thing. It feels like every player is like on the chopping block. And I know it's not real. It feels like there's no one in this tournament or no one in this team where it's not that there's no star power. It's just that there's no one in the public sight about this team. And so that kind of means it slips by. And so people are focusing on the other countries and it gets bogged down by things that are happening in the world right now.
Well, I think that the geopolitical stuff plays a massive reason why there may not be a lot of excitement about this tournament right now, right? Infantino the other day or yesterday said, no, Iran is going, they'll play. Okay. I can't. But I think, first of all, we're coming out of, March Madness is coming to an end. Baseball is starting.
Go Blue.
NBA playoffs are starting.
Winter Olympics was just happening.
Right. Like, I think it's not time for the hype for the casuals yet. I agree that in 94, keep in mind, there were half as many teams in 94. There were 24 teams in 94. I think as spring turns to summer, things will start to get bubbling up, and the U.S. team, once it's announced, will be pushed upon the U.S. sports public at the very least, maybe not the entire public, as here are players to pay attention to. For me, I'm very thankful that the Turkey game is last in the group because it means, say what you want. The ticket prices today to get into that opening match, I think, start at $1,500 face. And I can't imagine that game won't sell out, whether at those prices or less or even more. I don't believe there are enough Paraguayans in the world that will come to LA for this game. And again,
pay for it.
We saw what happened in Korea with the US, and we saw what happened in Costa Rica for the in Harrison, right, during the friendlies and during the World Cup, where US fans sat on their hands and were late.
I was at both of those.
Yeah, as was I. They both sucked. The point I'm trying to make is I'm very confident they will be a very strong home field advantage for both of those games, both in Seattle and LA. And I think the US rather, has the talent plus the crowd, which can't be denied, to win those games.
Can I ask you something as someone who, like I said, wasn't around for 94?
Yeah.
So we all know about the qualifying for 1990, like how they had that last minute goal. They had that goal, that famous goal, just go into 1990.
Yeah.
What was the team like going into 94 results wise?
Yeah. So, I mean, I certainly I can pull it up, but the team played a series of friendlies around the country. And still, the team was largely unknown up until the summer, but for the soccer fans, there was a big win in the US Cup 93, which was from 90 to 94, there was an annual summer tournament, a 4-team tournament that was round robin tournament that was played called the US Cup. And in 93, I believe the US beat England in that tournament. They were mostly
like a male She Believes.
Huh? Yeah, yes.
Like a male version of the She Believes.
That's right. And so, there was definitely, and Lawless had the beard, and keep in mind, it's before the internet, right? Mm-hmm. So you really had to dig. It was listservs that were the way that soccer fans talk to each other. I mean, you laugh, but it wasn't there yet. And, Sam's Army really got its start after the World Cup of 94, where there was a desire to have fervent fandom like the other countries, because that wasn't really evident at the games themselves. So, all of sports media was a different world in the pre-internet world, and fewer channels. We didn't have streaming television. And, I mean, I'm old enough, guys, to remember in 1990, TNT had the World Cup, and they took commercial breaks during the games. And in fact, they missed a goal. I think it was the goal that we scored against. I think we lost to Czechoslovakia 5-1 in that tournament, and they missed our goal because they were in a commercial. So
tough.
There was a building hype as much as there could have been at that time. Remember, there also was no National League. There was the APSL. There was it was semi-pro at that time. And so you really had to be tuned in to find this stuff since then. It's a completely different landscape now. And I mean, the fact that, as it's often been said, and I'll stop talking in a second, you can, watch 400 games a year here, if not more, from the top leagues in the world every weekend. Mm. Plus, there's live tracking on your handheld computer device to allow you to follow National League South teams, right? And feel like you're a part of it. So, it's a completely different world. I think the hype machine will start as May starts, because there's too much money and too much sponsorship dollars to not have this thrust in everyone's face. I guarantee you Pulisic will be on a cereal box. I guarantee you Winston McKennie will have his face in different campaigns. And
I already got a documentary coming out.
The 94 documentary, right?
No, the one leading up to the World Cup for this one.
I know that there's is it on Fox about summer of 94? I know that there's a Fox
HBO just announced one.
Oh, great.
Oh, really?
For this specific team leading into the World Cup.
Well,
so is it kind of like the old 24/7s where before the Winter Classic of boxing?
Yeah, it's probably from like this camp and then the next camp. But
yeah, it's Hard Knocks. But
I kind of want to build on what kind of Mike brought up first. Is like, I don't know. I just when I watch this team, right, it feels like a lot of these guys just don't want to be there. From my perspective,
crazy.
Right? But like when you see them play on the pitch, it's like they're not connected. They don't have that spirit of wanting to be there and play good soccer, right? Like you look at some of these results the past couple of years. Pulisic hasn't scored since 2024. Yeah. Just think about that. Like I know like there's a lot of pressure on him. I mean, he kind of puts a lot of it on himself. He's making documentaries at his age. It's like a lot of what we're seeing with this current team is being forced down fans' like throats a little bit. I feel like there's a lot of resentment with some of these players right now where, they're not getting the results that, fans are not getting the results they're expecting. And the team isn't living up to certain expectations of where these guys are playing, right? So I think there's a lot of, butting heads heading into this World Cup. And that's where I feel like a lot of the angst is coming from. I think, it's going to be interesting to see how some of these, these next two games in June, right? Germany, if they don't get a result there, Senegal as well. Like go through these 2 games with lost similar results. I mean, it's going to be brutal heading into the World Cup. I mean, you've already got certain fractions of the fan base, on your back, saying we need some results. Like there's people saying that we should get to the semis. Like that's their expectations. And obviously those are, not realistic per se. Obviously you want to hope to get to something like that, but it's going to be interesting. Like what if they go into the World Cup and they, draw to Australia?
Dan, keep in mind they can finish 3rd in the group in advance.
Yeah, but like still, like if they draw to an Australia, like it's gonna be, I don't know. I just feel like there's a lot of bad juju with this team right now from the players themselves, the fans, Poch himself as well. Like he's not really doing a good service to, his team, in my opinion. So it's really interesting and leading up to the last couple of months heading into this World Cup.
He's so cool. I know you want to talk, Mike, for just 1 second.
Yeah.
Like Poch is like, he's so cool. Like he's so chill. And it works against, I mean, in 94 it was Bora, right? Bora spoke no languages. Like Bora was a character and you could build on that. And Poch is like a cerebral, Spaniard who Italian, help me. Sorry.
Argentine?
Thank you. I'm sorry, guys. Who, he doesn't emote a lot, and it's very inside thinky and chill.
Mm-hmm.
And I just and I'll just echo the point before I cede to Mike. Like, in 1994, these guys were playing to make a name for themselves because they were hoping to move to Europe, which at the time was outrageous for the notion that an American could play in European leagues. And now, the Champions League is, if not riddled, but certainly peopled with American players, if not stars. And these guys are pulling down, 9 figures and 6 figures, 7 figures, 7 figures. And so, I think there may be a hunger deficit here, frankly, Mike.
And wait, before I concede the mic real quick, I will kind of echo what you said, Mark, right, about Poch. And personally, coming into this cycle, I wanted a rah-rah guy. For me, this team feels like it needed a real motivator in that locker room and kind of, elevate this team when they come out certain games flat, or they come into a camp, not feeling 100%. You have a coach, a rah-rah coach kind of elevate you, make you want to run through a wall. I just feel like Poch is just too chill for this team and what they kind of needed. And we're kind of seeing it with certain results and how they're playing in this cycle when he got hired halfway through it.
Fair enough. Mike, did you have something you wanted to say?
Yeah, just real quick. You mentioned that Pulisic hasn't scored since 2024, right?
For the U.S.
Yes, for the U.S.
Yes, for the U.S.
It's been a while.
Been a while. I don't know. Correct me if I'm wrong. Wasn't there a whole situation where he wasn't even joining the team for like stretches?
For a Gold Cup this past summer.
So there's 2 things. First off, you have the players who will just say again.
Because he needed a break.
Because we need a break, but you have players who will not play in every game that they can. And look, if you need a break, I'm not going to say you're wrong. I will say that has affects team cohesiveness. There's a reason why, guys like the other Berhalter are, now national team players, for better or for worse. But at the other point of this, I still think we fired our last head coach too late. I still think we fired.
Shouldn't have brought him back.
Oh my God!
Yeah, because you now have a new head coach, or you have a head coach who took his position 2 years to go before the World Cup, and there was no time for him to really implement things to a good level.
He didn't have to qualify.
Yeah,
he did.
So there was no gauntlet to play to figure out. Right, iron makes iron. He just had to pull players together.
All you had was Nations League, and people have their issues with that. But that's not really the type of tournaments that's going to turn it into iron or turn them into diamonds. You have your one game against Mexico, and that's really the biggest game, maybe, unless you lose in the semifinals. Womp womp. But the point is that I don't think this team has gotten the culture because the players, to your point, Dan, they aren't being consistent. They don't seem like they want to be there consistently for whatever reason.
Yeah.
I'm not going to speculate what it is, but we have players who will just skip tournaments. And now we have a head coach. We have a head coach who probably hasn't been able to develop the system he should.
All right. We hope that this little discourse on the U.S. men's national team has not soured you so much that you do not come out on Saturday night to see the Red Bulls play. We did not actually make goal predictions. Dan, let's start with you. What do you think?
Man, this is tough. It's funny. I always predict like wins and they'll come out and throw a stinker like Montreal, right? Yeah. So I'm gonna say a 2-1 loss. I think Danke gets a brace and Cincinnati wins.
Mike Batista.
I think this is going to be a game where both teams score. I think this is going to be a 3-2 FC Cincinnati win.
I am going to be a little more optimistic and say that the Red Bulls will get a point out of Saturday in a wild 3-3 draw.
No defense.
Fans breathless, and hopefully have them coming back for more. We appreciate Danny Higginbotham for joining. We appreciate Zach Feldman for all his stats. And we appreciate you for watching, listening, and or subscribing. It's episode 649 of Seeing Red. We will be back next week to break it all down and prep for messy week. And so we thank you for watching Seeing Red. Have a good night, everyone. Let's go Red Bulls. Bye-bye.